Hey everybody, we are ready for another CIRF report. This one is going to be a special report because, as indicated in the energies afforded in the early part of June, we're going on a trip. Angie and I are headed out, be gone for a couple of weeks, and therefore I want to make sure that you all get the proper energies and prepared for both of those weeks. So June 1st through June 14th is what this CIRF report is going to help you with. Eyes Wide Open is what this one is called. And we'll get to the name and why we're calling it the Eyes Wide Open. There's a lot of Sagittarian energy. First week, there's a full moon in Sagittarius, but also the ruler of Sagittarius, Jupiter, has a lot of energetic influence on it. It's over the North Node, perfects over the North Node into the future, and has a T-square on it. And then you've got, with the help of Venus and Mars, kind of handing off a T-square over Jupiter. So there's a lot of pressure on all things Jupiter, and therefore Sagittarius and the full moon. All that's big energy. And the I-Ching, and that's perfectly confirmed with the dream bot. It's all about travel, and that's exactly what Sag and Jupiter, part of their archetype, represents. But that's not even, half of the energies for the rest of the 2 weeks. We've got, let's see here, full moon. We've got Mercury and Uranus making a perfect conjunction. We got Venus going into Leo. The I-Ching helps us realize that this last quarter moon is really a big deal, because it's not just a moon, a last quarter moon in Pisces, but it's over Neptune. And so it makes that combination is very yin and receptive, which is what I-Ching number 2 is. And so it wants us to focus in on both of the archetypes of the moon, the lunar phases. All right. So the first week, it's about the Dreambot. And that makes sense, because Dreambot is a little bit shorter term, a little more imminent. It's no surprise that it's already feeling the full moon energy and the T-square over Jupiter. And the I-Ching wants us to realize that the last quarter moon and the energies around that, so it'd be in the second week, is something to keep your awareness of. Now, when we combine those two together, it's about, travel and higher mind and philosophy and knowing and knowledge, a higher level wisdom, combining that with the receptive. That's where I got the Eyes Wide Open. We become curious. Well, the good travelers were becoming curious and wanting to figure out what's different in this area, and appreciating the differences, instead of coming in like a bull and turning everything over or judging everything and saying how crappy everything is. So that's also the receptive. So that's the combination of that curiosity and learning in the receptive as well. And that combination is, eyes have to be wide open. So that's the pure yin state. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, we had, pretty much a record low on comments over on YouTube. And this is not a guilt trip, because it was equally matched with a flood, almost considered a flood of donations. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. And that being said, the only comments that met the criteria for this award, this weekly award, goes to, over on Rumble, Philly 369 Garden and Bravesteed with with 3 likes each. But anyway, shout out to everybody Comment if you want to. I'm not here to guilt trip you. It's not your responsibility to grow my channel. We're doing that with these surf reports, and Angie's doing a great job more with the shorts, and seems to be working. So thank you, everybody, for your help and support. You can already see the astrology. There's a lot there. Whoops, wrong slide. All right, so the Dreambot, and this is for today, 5/31, so May 31st, the day before our 2-week surf period. And it's showing mood again. Remember mood? And I verified in the raw Dreambot data, the word mood is increasing almost exponentially. It was number one last time, and this time it's even higher, even higher search score. And look at woke. Woke, I'm verifying this with the raw data. Woke is back up again. They're pumping that word, those two words. Why? What's mood have to do with anything? Anybody know? It doesn't seem to follow all the other trends. I mean, I suppose you could have a mood while you're traveling. All these red arrows are about travel, and it's pretty obvious. Even the word visiting and traveling. So there you go. So anyway, I think that's about it. This is going to kind of expire, not to be too appropriate for the second week of our surf report. The I-Ching does have a further reach into the future, which is why they're different energetically. But I like the differences because in our triangulation chart, that's where we get the main energy. It's not which one is the strongest. It's the combination of all these big energies. And what does that feel like? That's why I like having all the differences put together into a triangulation chart. All right. So I didn't annotate all these. There are some important ones. This is a lot fatter. Our two black vertical lines is where we're looking for this week. This is the first 2 weeks in June 2023. And Venus is going into Leo. We have Venus and Pluto in a standoff or in a opposition. We have the full moon in Sag on the 3rd. We have the new moon in the next surf report, will be just after the surf report's being made. On the 17th of June, that's in Gemini. And then a whole lot more. But remember the bigger picture here, the eclipse cycle. Don't worry, we don't have an eclipse this time around, but we're still in the Aries cycle. And each one of these little widgets is helping us bring out more of your inner warrior. And your inner warrior rises when you find yourself, your true self, your higher self. Tap into that. That's when each one of these 30-day cycles is trying to help us do that in service to the bigger phase. You are here in this little box, time position in between the Taurus new moon and the Gemini new moon. We have the Sagittarius full moon, in service of bringing out our inner warrior. All right, so on Thursday, okay, so what's different on this? Well, I'm not going to go through 14 days. I'm going to go through by event, and I'll tell you when those events are, but we're going to go by event. We're going to start on the 1st of January. We have a grand cross early in the day that really pressurizes the whole energetic system here, and that will decay. The grand cross will decay about midday, but the Jupiter T-square will remain, and it'll remain conflicted on the future because it's over the North Node. Now, specifically, Jupiter and the North Node make a perfect conjunction at 7:43 p.m. Central Daylight Savings Time. This is into the future. We talked about it last time because our conjunctions have 8 degrees orbs, and Jupiter has been in getting closer and closer to North Node. So it puts optimism and everything Jupiter, that's even travel and higher level wisdom that I mentioned earlier, and it combines it with the future. So trying to see hope in the future, trying to stay positive about the future, and might even be able to, but it's an element that you don't know yet because it's unknown. The mind, when it makes up its stories about the future, it seems real, it seems true, it seems solid. And only when you realize that it's the future and your mind is making up stories will you know the truth. And so the future will eventually get to you, but you don't really know what it'll bring. And that's what I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by. Hence the eyes wide open is, I thought I was going to expect this, and then they get something else. That's part of the eyes wide open. So kind of a surprise element. And that's also matched with the Mercury and Uranus coming together. That'll be an event for later in our 2 weeks. But I'm calling this Jupiter North Node a gateway into synchronistic future, and it's only experienced. It isn't in the mind, like I talked about earlier, because you don't ever really know the future, but it's finding the truth or finding it through your five senses because it's in Taurus. It has to be. Jupiter and North Node, last time they were together was January 23rd of 2016. So you can kind of go back and see what's happening for you and the world back then. But it was in Virgo. Jupiter and the North Node were in Virgo. There weren't nearly as many. There wasn't certainly not a T-square on Jupiter, but there was a heavy focus more on the Virgo items back then. So you can kind of compare that with the events that happened back then with what to expect here, but it's in Taurus. So things are more of value, worth, and your own personal values and standing by them and learning how to be solid in those and very idealistic. Then we have Pluto making the part of that T-square on Jupiter. It'll just constantly be here for the 2 weeks, rejuvenates new sources of hope and optimism because Pluto is the planet of overhauling your sense of optimism, positivity. But there's also, because it's a square, it's hard energy going back and forth. So it makes it difficult. It's a pressure, it's conflicted, but it's also empowering. And it can be a very powerful alignment when we're talking about, especially Jupiter in Taurus, wealth and value, big time. All right, so then we go into June 3rd, a couple days later, and we hit the full moon in Sagittarius. And that's at 10:41 p.m. Central Daylight Savings Time. And we can see that here. You can see that almost looks like a butterfly pattern. But the main focus is on, obviously, the full moon. But we also have Pluto and Venus. Those two oppositions are crossing each other. And I think that's important, because the focal point is definitely Sagittarius, but we do have to honor this balancing requirement on Pluto and Venus. And that will force us to consider self-power versus over-caring. You got Venus still in Cancer at this time, and that's a very caring, relationally, Venus. Venus is love, but in a Cancer-esque way. She she cares a lot more empathy. But Pluto in Aquarius just kind of sees things, not really all that engaged, just sort of dissociated. And the power of being alone is another part of that archetype. So alone versus caring too much, over caring possibly. So we got that in the shadows of this need to get away. And ironically, Sagittarius can get a little superficial in that we don't want to get too deep in relationships, because that just represents tethers to our need to get up and go far. And so that's why this focal point is so important on this day. It's plus or minus 24 hours. And then look how close Mercury and Uranus are getting. We're going to talk about that in the next slide. It's a really beautiful layout, but in practice, or in the energetic influence that I'm expecting to feel that day, probably a little bit more pressurized. Yeah, but a lot of us are used to this by now. I think it's going to be shocking when we don't have all these squares and don't have the energetic conflicts. June 4th is our next. So we just passed one day. And this is when yours truly, I think, is going to have a wonderful day on June 4th. For me, I've got both of my rulers, my main rulers in my chart, Mercury and Uranus, in a perfect conjunction in Taurus. I'm expecting major insights, maybe some inventive mental power, certainly some disruption of patterns, partly because of this Taurus thing. Taurus is patterned and routine, but this shakes it all up. And so you can see patterns and routines shaking up. And that matches perfectly with eyes wide open, but the Sagittarian travel and open up your mind and learn new cultures, etc. Doesn't even see. Yeah, I wrote doesn't even need to see, wants to have only good 5 senses. So that's pleasure, and maybe even excessive, the pressure to get more, or sense more, or be happier, or be more positive, with Jupiter over the North Node in Taurus. So there's that excitement in the air as well, but it almost has to be, which kind of dampens the happiness in the moment. So then we go tick off another day. This is June 5th. This is Venus going into Leo. So childlike love and play, but it's opposite of Pluto. So like we talked about before, still got that nagging conflict or balancing requirement that we have an overhaul in the relationships. First of all, it is kind of when we talk about childlike, not in a bad way, but in a very curious way. So it matches eyes wide open. But on deck, or the coming energy, is the Mars and Venus coming together in Leo. And that's very passionate, extreme passion, but that's not yet. That's on deck. And could be exuberant spending. This is, remember, Venus is also finance. So be willing to put money down for bling, or looking better, or more fire and passion. Even without the Mars yet, the Leo energy is passionate. So we've got a waning gibbous moon as we head towards the last quarter moon, which we will stop in on later. And that just means you want to start finalizing your monthly lunar goals. this one in Taurus, so whatever goals you had, start finishing those up before the last quarter and start slowing down. And here it is. We are in the last quarter moon, and that happens on June 10th, 2:31 p.m. And this is where the I-Ching, I think, is mainly pointing us to, which is the receptive or hexagram 2. And the reason why is we have the last quarter moon, which is sort of yin anyway. It's the big marker for stopping everything, not a lot of doing. It's about, this last phase is about recouping. You put all that work in, now you're rewarded with the harvest now. Not that you're doing all that harvesting work, it's just now you're enjoying that. You're rejuvenating, sitting back. It's an acceptance phase. It's a gift phase. Gift born out of the effort that you put out throughout the rest of the lunar phase. So from last quarter to the new moon, that 1 week is about getting your power back, getting your energies topped off, and so that you can repeat again when that new moon shows up. You're ready to ignite the imagination so you can plan out the next goals. Wanted to also point out that Stephen Greer, I think this is going to be big, obviously not mainstream, but Stephen Greer's Disclosure Announcement Conference is June 10th, 11th, and 12th. And he has been on videos inviting some of people's or nations' higher level politicians, rulers, etc. He says that either one or more prominent congressmen is going to be there, so that'll be interesting. And hopefully that will, there was also a RICO lawsuit in there, so you can go into our Telegram channel and scroll up and see the video of Stephen Greer and make your own assessment. But let's get back to the last quarter over Neptune in Pisces. This is at the same time, just the last quarter alone is more of a hexagram to I-Ching, which is the yin. It's the yin time. It's the big reminder to take a breath and receive. It's a receiving. But now with the Neptune, it makes it even more yin-y. It makes it more dreamy. It makes it easier to receive. It's not so contentious. Even if it is contentious, it makes you able to receive it. So lots of dreams, forces us to hold back, slow down, take in. Now, also be a hard time thinking along these times. Mercury now this demonstrates just how fast Mercury's going, but already out of an orb, a conjunction orb with Uranus. So that energy's gone. All right, now we zoom to June 11th, and two big things happen here. Mercury goes into Gemini at 5:26 a.m., and then just 20 minutes later, Pluto will go back into Capricorn. So technically, we're already looking like it's in Capricorn when it's still yellow. Or software has that little glitch where if it's 59.9, it rounds it up to 30 and codes it that way. So, but it's technically already there, and back into Capricorn, Pluto goes. Very subtle, but if you get into deeper layers of your subconscious, you will have that opportunity to capture the last quarter moon over Neptune and receive. It's the opportunity to receive empowerment, moving back into Capricorn, so you're revisiting old challenges through dreams and imagination. That's where the last quarter moon is. And then those past dreams, past challenges, maybe through your dreams and imagination, and they will empower you and help you create new objectives, new goals, i.e. Capricorn, based on what you learned from those challenges. And then Mercury going into Gemini, this is returning home. So you can see Mercury here is at 0 degrees Gemini. And so finally, logic prevails in minds everywhere. Logic comes to the fore of all this madness. Thank you. Now, also on June 11th, this is what happens. This is all this mess. This is just huge. So a few hours later, 10:39 a.m., basically, it's more than a T-square on Jupiter, Jupiter being 2.5 degrees away from the North Node. So still very strong, still very future-based. Still have that A, remember we talked about last time? Boy, that's interesting. Another eyes wide open kind of scenario. It's possible or energetically symbolized there. Don't know. Can't predict. Can't predict outcomes. I can predict energies. But we have an exact square. So at 10:39 a.m., Jupiter and Venus are in a perfect square, and Mars and Venus are now within an orb. So it's a loose conjunction, but that energy now, as we see a loose or a subtle combination of the two, less distinct than before. And when they go to a perfect conjunction, you'll see neither one as separate. That's just both the energies. And I think the best word to describe it is passion. But this square is exact, and at the same time, this is part of the T-square, you've got Jupiter and Pluto, and this is a looser square, but it's trouble. It can feel like trouble in the markets, because you've got Venus now in a perfect square with Jupiter, the planet of hope. Finance has trouble seeing hope into the future. And Pluto also there in a square against wealth, because remember, Jupiter is wealth. We also have dominating passion. I like that, because Leo can be very domineering, and passion inside that is a whole different kind of leadership. But a lot there, and it's the Leo energy squared off to the hope into the future and travel and Jupiter, and then square over to planet of transformation. So transition of wealth and worth systems, question mark, trouble in the markets, question mark. I don't know. These are outcomes, but that's the energy. Now we're on the last day of our CIRF report, June 14th, 2023. This is midday, June 14th. This is, now we're talking 6 degrees between Mars and Venus, so that passion is getting stronger. But look at all those squares. It's because the moon is there. This is squares over to North Node, Jupiter, the moon, and Uranus. That's what these two planets cover. So it's a Leo energy squared over to Taurus energy, and it is a versus. Taurus versus Leo. They're both can be very dominating. And so it's bullheaded versus the creative leader. It's a powerful duel. And I mean, luckily the T-square is no more, but we're still left with a lot of contentious energy. Which one will dominate? Well, It won't, because it's the energy that we're focused in on. All right, let's get into the I-Ching. And this I-Ching will be is supposed to be valid for the entire 2 weeks. So both the influence and the solution. So Yin 2 is receptive. The great receptivity attracts great gifts and great blessings. That's a perfect match to the last quarter moon, especially in Pisces, especially over Neptune. This auspicious hexagram consisting of all yin lines represents the power of the feminine principle. Such receptivity is much more powerful and healing than we think. So we got to go through these lines, and line 2 says good results are achieved without contrivance, complex intentions, or even great effort. That's a match to the last quarter. It's about receiving at this time. Let nature serve as a reminder of how, without artificiality, everything good can develop naturally. Let it unfold. That's eyes wide open. Line 3, focus on accepting yourself unconditionally. Do not display your virtue for all to see, but nurture it within yourself. Line 6, when boundaries are not clearly defined, both dogs and nations quarrel. If you attempt to change your role now, a bloody battle may ensue. Slow down. Do not act until roles and responsibilities have been made clear. The last quarter moon would extend that and say, let's not do much of anything until the new moon. So here's our energy chart. We got 2 weeks worth, and we initially have kind of a tie between the contention or T-square over Jupiter and North Node. This is the future focus, and it's also the Sagittarian focus. Jupiter, Sagittarian, kind of the same archetypes. And then the full moon on the 3rd kind of doubles this whole thing. These are additive. This blue line and the red line are of the same ilk, and so they double. So it's a first week is a massive Sagittarian Jupiter energy. Travel, luck, synchronicity, wealth, curiosity, learning, higher level learning. The regular old just school learning is Mercury. That's not warranted here. So that the first part of our CIRF 2 weeks is going to be a huge amount of Sagittarian Jupiter energy. And then on the second week, there are some other bubbles. The last quarter moon should have been represented on here. I'm sorry, I didn't do that. And I think that's on the 11th, 10th or 11th. But we have the main one this whole week is still that Jupiter T-square, Jupiter of the North Node. And it does expire on the 14th, but the squares on Jupiter remain. So that's why it doesn't just fall off completely. All right, it's time to transition, but let's go ahead and summarize the influence. All right. There's your eyes wide open, and you can see just how many of those influences matched eyes wide open. Mother Luna, that's the moon energetic status in the first 2 weeks of June 2023, trumps many big energetic influences, as you can see. The full moon on the 3rd brings exhilaration, synchronicity, and expansiveness. God, I love that. I don't know why I keep forgetting that expansiveness, but positivity and optimism as well. While the last moon over Neptune on the 10th sends the collective into pure yin receptivity, imagination, connection, compassion, and blissful rejuvenation. And the combination between the synchronicity and expansiveness and the receptivity of the last moon brings the 2 weeks together for the overall context of get ready, Get ready to accept. Get ready to become aware. Receive. Get ready to receive. Whoops. Let's stay on that and let's get into the solution. So put those 3 change lines in and you get behaviorally, according to the I-Ching, it wants us to or suggests that we repair the damage. When something is rotting, it is time to repair the damage. Self-indulgence and corruption grows like weeds in an untended garden. They must be faced squarely and rooted out with bold action. Eliminating corruption and the sloppiness that leads to it is an ennobling human enterprise and clears the way for fresh new beginnings. Such repair efforts ultimately lead to supreme success. And I'm going to show you in the solution triangulation how what you need to do as your part of this cleaning the collective corruption, cleaning the collective self-indulgence. All right, so stand by on that. This is the time to be lean and efficient. Weeds must be rooted out before the whole garden is lost. If we don't do this now, we pay huge consequences as a collective. Fighting decay, indifference, and corruption is not a simple matter. The steps must be evaluated carefully, and planning should precede action. All right, so in the first week, and I should have gone back to here. I think that would have been better. Stand by. So we were here. Yeah. All right, so I have 2 conversion charts. And in the first week, we have the full moon in Sagittarius. And so that puts us at Rave Gate 5, and the sidereal solution is Scorpio. And so let me slide over. Why won't it let me slide? Well, all right. What are we going to do here? I'm going to pull this down. There we go. All right, now look. I have the second week, and the second week is the last quarter moon over Neptune, and that's in hexagram 22 of the Rave, and we have an Aquarian solution. And now let's go look at what these conversions are. Hexagram 5 is where the full moon is, and it's in line 3, compulsiveness. The fear engendered by the sense of helplessness resulting in unnecessary stress and activity. It means that this rave suggests that watch out for too much imagination because it will create or may create a sense of helplessness. This is, by the way, a perfect match to the T-square on Sagittarius on Jupiter, where we have this forced need to feel optimistic. And that's kind of the same one. Incidentally, the ruler is Jupiter. Jupiter has a T-square over the full moon in Sagittarius. So all correlated pretty tightly. Then on the second week, we have Rave, hexagram 22, and it's line 3 as well. Both of these are line 3. And it's perfected grace. Form as a definition and actualization of substance, the possibility for perfected openness through the alignment of emotional energy and awareness. Kaboom! This is a perfect match to the energetic I-Ching 2 because we're learning how to offer grace. We're not resisting anything. We're not being stubborn. We're not trying to fight anything. So this is the solution, is how to be a lot more receptive, true receptivity and perfected grace, perfected openness through the alignment of emotional energy and awareness. Cool stuff, but probably confusing until we put it all together. So let's do that now. All right. So in our triangulation for the solution, we have 1 I-Ching. We have 2 Raves, and therefore 2 Sidereal. Okay, I'm going to put all that together to make it easy for us. And because it's going to be kind of confusing, I'm going to describe my affirmation first. All right, so my summary of all this energy, in my opinion, is my personal shadow offers me the opportunity to help cleanse the collective. And remember, when we are to clear out, that's according to the I-Ching, we're here to thwart corruption, to repair the rotting and decaying society, right? So then we have the initial of the first week, we have the full moon in a kind of a helpless sense of unnecessary stress and activity. That's all in the imagination. It's not real. All right. So it gets our eyes wide open looking for it. But it's a Sidereal Scorpio. So let's put it all together. All right. Let's see how this goes. In the first week of June, you are encouraged to bring forth your Scorpio shadow and honor it with appropriate channeling of patterned personal compulsiveness, secretiveness, or obsessiveness, converting that past energy into intense, brave, and even vindictive destruction of current collective shadows. Okay, what this means is you're going to take your shadows purposefully, consciously, and however you're going to do it, through ritual, meditation, any other spiritual practice, and bring those forward in an open yin state, and channel those through your intention towards imagining corruption being thwarted, corruption being resolved, rotten and disgusting decay in our society is being healed. And you do that through imagining it. Okay. And basically, you are resolving both your personal shadow and resolving, in doing so, resolving the collective shadow. This is the true middle finger to today's corruption, decay, and putrefaction that plagues modern society. The second week of June demands that you retract, recede, and open your heart. It's a quick turn karma that is created. It's the time to become receptive and open and accept the results created from the sacrifices of week 1. Turn off the vindictiveness and give ample grace. But in Aquarian style, step back and view your work without judgment, without comparison, nor any self-congratulations. It is what it is. That's the Aquarian style. And it's Aquarian because we have the Sidereal Aquarius as our solution for week 2. And it's shadow work because we have Sidereal Scorpio for our behavioral component on week 1. And both of those are combining, repairing the damage and corruption. So the statement again is, my personal shadow offers me the opportunity to help cleanse the collective. And then to help that and to accentuate the main energies, especially if you imagine those energy charts again, if you go back to those, you can see it's so heavily weighted on Sagittarius and Jupiter that I'm choosing the AWAS. It's an M-shaped rune, and those keywords are changes, faith, loyalty, trust, movement, and travel. So it's a high match for the Sagittarian archetype, and it's used for safe travels, physical and mental stamina, promotes trustworthy and loyal relationships. Remember, those relationships are changing with Venus opposed Pluto, and brings swift changes. Remember, Mercury and Uranus make a conjunction, so it aids in that. And it aids with astral travel. So it can even help in the spiritual realm. And then I like I forget the name of it, but it's the warrior, bringing out the warrior of Aries. And this is because we're in the ecliptical cycle of Aries, as I described earlier. Anyway, it's just the arrow, the up arrow. I was going to read it for you, but I can't find it in a timely manner. Well, there it is. TWAS. Courage, victory, strength, passion. Okay. And it's used for healing, success, victory in competition, strengthen willpower, courage, strengthening spiritual faith. That'll help with the T-square over Jupiter. All right, so one thing I'd like to point out is you can see just how confusing it can be to have all these different massive energies, which is why the ideal CIRF report is 1 week. It makes it very difficult to span those out. But hopefully at least you get an idea of what to expect energetically in the first 2 weeks of June 2023. I don't know what else to say. When we're through our travels, I'm also going to be working on the next CIRF report. So if I get any more updates on this 2 weeks, I will update those on the NDC channel of YouTube and hopefully Rumble and BitChute, but the main channel is YouTube. And also Telegram. Go check that out in the show notes below. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you, everybody, for donating. And it warms me. It really does help. Just thank you. Thank you. All right. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.